Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Chronically Me podcast. I'm your host, Aimee Esther. In today's episode, we have a very special guest here to talk about hope when you don't have a diagnosis for your chronic illness. If you live chronically ill like me and are looking for more purpose, control, and joy in your life, then you are in the right place. This is the podcast that challenges your thinking around chronic illness so you can live the most amazing life despite extra challenges. Are you ready? Let's go. All right. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Brittany here and we're going to talk about hope through no diagnosis. So Brittany, let's start by, can you tell us a little about yourself, illnesses, and anything else you'd like to share with us?
Okay, I am 27. I am a wife and a mom of 2 little boys. And I started with my pain when I was 14, and I was undiagnosed still till today, so 13 years. And then I was diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia a year ago. And that was when trying to find hope really started, because I had so many years of being undiagnosed with one thing that I was terrified when the pain of the trigeminal neuralgia started. I was terrified that I wouldn't be diagnosed again. And so then, and the pain was really bad. And so I felt like I had no hope at that point, because I was like, I had no faith, I guess, in the medical system for so long, that then when this started, I had to really have faith in the system to try to get a diagnosis.
I'd like to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, HEALTHTAP. HEALTHTAP is a telemedicine company where you can talk to doctors 24/7 with their urgent care or by appointment with the doctor of your choice. I think HealthTap is the perfect solution to someone who lives chronically ill because it's virtual. You can do it from your home. You can talk to your doctors from your home where you are safe and you don't have to use your energy and your precious time to get up and go to multiple doctor's appointments. As we all know, we have. You can connect with a doctor in minutes or schedule an appointment with the doctor of your choice. You can get personalized care by video chat or text your doctor anytime to get refills, clarify health goals, and ask questions. With a doctor I worked with on HealthTap, we talked about some of my gut health, and she said that I could text her some of the foods that I was more sensitive to so she could go over that before our next appointment. And it's so easy to send a little text message to your doctor with follow-up questions. You can get a diagnosis, prescription, lab tests, referrals, and a treatment plan, all from the comfort of your own home. Get the care that's right for you, whether it's women's health, children's health, sexual health, men's health, chronic care, or wellness prevention and lifestyle. HealthTap accepts hundreds of insurance plans to use for both urgent care and primary care visits. Enjoy savings and benefits with subscription. HealthTap offers an inexpensive, convenient, and simple way to manage chronic illness and live your best life. If you subscribe and use the code AEPC, you get your first visit for free. Use my link in the description of the YouTube video version of this podcast or in the show notes on your favorite podcast app. Now let's get back to the episode. What changed for you? Like, how did you get the faith and the hope during that process? How'd you still believe in yourself when everyone's telling you,
Yeah,
no?
It really was just finding the right doctor. When I found a doctor that really was like, okay, I believe you're in pain, and they could see the pain, and they were shocked by how much pain I was in and how long it had only gone on for a few days, but they were like, I can't believe you've been in this pain for this long without help. But then I was like, well, I've been in pain in other areas of my body for 13 years. And but it was really just finding the right doctor that was like, okay, I believe in you and we're going to figure it out. And they didn't give up on me.
Yeah. So when doctors did give up on you, how did you not give up? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the pain was just so bad that I felt like I couldn't give up because I was too scared of what would happen.
Yeah.
Just the pain was getting worse and worse. The pain specifically that's undiagnosed is in my legs. It started when I was 14, and the pain gets really bad to where I can't walk sometimes. And so when I was 14, I told my parents, and so they would take me to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician just said, oh, it's just joint pain, just growing pains.
Hmm.
And then I turned like 18 and the doctors were like, oh yeah, you're still growing, it's fine. And then it, kept going, and now I'm 27 and I still have the pain and they still don't know what's causing the pain.
Yeah. So are you still searching for answers with that leg pain, or have you just decided
I've
you
kind
deal with it
of
on your own, or do you still try to get a diagnosis for that?
I'm still trying to get a diagnosis. I actually have a doctor's appointment with a new neurologist in 2 weeks. And it was really just not giving up and just, taking it to my own hands now that I'm an adult and I don't have to rely on my parents, I guess, to find doctors for me. And so now I just find doctors and I'm explaining the pain that they don't understand me. Then I usually just give up with that one doctor and
Yeah.
move on to someone else.
Yeah. And try someone new. Yeah, I found that with me, like mine wasn't nearly that long, but it was was it 3 or 4 years before I got my diagnosis. And it was like I'd go to a new doctor and they would seem like they were all in, like, oh yeah, let's figure this out, let's do this. And then like as they do more and more tests and like, oh, these nothing's coming up, nothing's coming up, it's like slowly they would kind of do the same thing that all my other doctors did, which was like, oh, it must be nothing, like it's just depression or it's just an anxiety symptom. And not that those are easy, but like that my physical symptoms I knew were separate. And I kept having that over and over again of like, okay, let's do this. And I'd be hopeful. And then it would like slowly, my hope would die out with the doctors. But I found that anytime that I kept my own hope up, like I kept believing in myself, whether or not the doctor kept believing in it, I always was able to get better help. Whether it was, okay, well, this one didn't work, that's okay. I still feel hopeful. I'm going to go find a new doctor. Or I'm going to keep pushing this doctor because I feel like, he could actually help me or she could help me, but I just need to keep pushing. And I think it comes to, can we still have hope within ourselves, even if everybody else seems to be giving up, right?
And I think having kids, it also changed my perspective because now I have two little kids that I have to take care of. And so sometimes I have no choice but to have hope because I have to take care of two humans.
Yeah.
When a doctor doesn't believe me, it's more of like I have to validate myself. And so I just have to believe in myself and be like, okay, I know I'm in pain, whether or not I have a diagnosis, the symptoms are real.
Yeah.
And so I have to just keep on going. And even if it means seeing a doctor that doesn't believe in me, I believe in me. And that's like the biggest thing.
I love that. So say you got a diagnosis, but it didn't change your physical symptoms. Maybe it will, right? But sometimes it's like you get a diagnosis and it's like, well, there's still nothing we can do or whatever. Why does it help still to have a diagnosis, whether or not you can treat it differently or find different solutions? Like, even if your pain was exactly the same, why do you think it's still like we still want a diagnosis? Does that make sense?
I think mainly just to validate the symptoms.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier sometimes, if you have a diagnosis, okay, this is what's causing it. And even if I can't treat it differently, there's a name to it.
Yeah.
And for so long, because I also have POTS and some other heart arrhythmias, and for so long we didn't know what was causing my heart issues, and so I named my heart Harold. And it was just so, even if we didn't have a diagnosis, I knew, okay, like Harold is having a bad day today.
Yeah.
And, this is the symptoms. And this is, I could tell my friends, okay, I was in college at the time and I could be like, okay, Harold's just not working today. And even though we didn't have a diagnosis, having a name to it just helped so much. And it helped validate my symptoms just in myself. Like I didn't necessarily need anyone else to validate it, but it helped me know, okay, I'm not going crazy. The pain is real. And I think sometimes having a medical diagnosis just validates it even more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Because that really is all it is. Like ideally, yeah, you get a diagnosis and then there's treatments to be done. But sometimes you don't. But it's still, I find that for me, it's like just knowing that, like, oh, you have this condition It's validating, like, oh, that's why I feel this way. Oh, like somebody else can see it, not just me. And it is so interesting because it is that validation that feels the best, right? And of course we want to be able to treat our physical pain, but that validation, it feels so good. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we just have to give it to ourselves. I love that you named your own Harold. That's amazing. I think that's such great advice for anyone who is struggling with that. Like, I need the validation. Like, what if we validated ourselves in this? Right. And then when you feel validated about it, you're more likely to go and do the work to find those solutions, right? You're more likely to research more, go to more doctors, or try new things if you are feeling validated,
Yeah,
right?
I think you feel more confident in yourself, and then sometimes you're
Yeah.
able to stand up for yourself a lot more if you feel validated.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you suggest someone does who is still searching and they haven't found answers yet? What do you suggest they do?
I think, which is probably not the best advice, but for me, I like Googled a ton,
Hmm.
and I would find articles and it would say, like, this is possibly what you could have. And so then I would go to the doctors and be like, I know, like, I shouldn't be doing this because doctors say not to Google your symptoms.
Yeah.
But that was how I found a lot of my conditions, was Googling it and then going to doctors and just standing up for myself and saying, this is the symptoms I have. Can we run these tests? Just standing up for yourself. And even if you have like a tiny bit of hope, it's still worth it to keep going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have so many resources these days, right? Like videos, you could search anything on YouTube. I would always just search like these symptoms, like type my symptoms into YouTube. Like, has anybody dealt with this, to see if anything came up? And we do have so many resources and so much is out there. And it's definitely hard in some ways because there's so much out there, right? You could type in your symptoms and so many things come up.
Yeah.
But we do have so many resources. And I think for so long it was like doctors were the only place we could go for information about anything medically. And now we have so many resources. So I love that you're able to find things for yourself and learn. So that's something I find is really helpful, is learning as much as I can about my illness. And if I don't have a diagnosis, it's like learning about my pain receptors and how my brain works and how, like, you can just learn so much and it helps you to understand your body a little bit more the more that you learn about it. I love that. So we're talking about hope. What even is hope? Like, what does that mean to you?
For me, I think hope is just believing in like one day.
Mhm.
And, one day in the future, it might be, tomorrow, it might be 5 years. I think just having hope that one day there'll be an answer. I write a blog, and my slogan on there is, it's not about a cure or a diagnosis, it's just about never giving up.
Mm.
And I think that, we may, for me at least, my trigeminal neuralgia, there's no cure for it. And
Yeah.
so I know that even though there is no cure, the main thing is just to never give up. And, my kids need me, my husband needs me. And so even if the doctors say, okay, there's no cure for you, take this medication, it'll help the symptoms. I think hope is just knowing, maybe one day the medical community, researchers can find a cure.
Yeah.
And so I just have to have that like tiny bit of hope, but it helps me keep going every day knowing, today could be the day.
Yeah. I love that. I love to think like things will get better. That's just what I like to believe. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
what that means in like long term. I don't know if that means in a year from now, in a month from now. I don't know when or what it will look like. I just know that things are going to get better
Hmm.
in whatever way that means. Even if I live with this pain forever, I know that my life and my illness is going to get better. And maybe that just means that I'm going to learn to manage it better. Like, I'm going to learn to manage, my brain around my illness better. Maybe my pain is the same, or maybe it gets worse, but I'm just still going to believe that things are going to get better. And I feel like when I believe that, then I feel better in the moment, right? I'm
Hmm.
not so stressed in the moment, and I'm not in a hurry, because I feel like anytime we're in a hurry to get an answer or to um, get like try new treatment, then we end up making mistakes. We end up doing too much and not really knowing
Hmm.
what's actually working, or we end up spending all of our money or all of our time on too much, right? It's overwhelming, and it becomes it just becomes too much for us. And I find that
Mhm.
if I just decide, yes, I'm going to find answers, but I'm not in a hurry to do it because I'm going to be okay. Like I can do this and I'm good at chronic illness. This is my talent. It's what I'm good at, right? But just believing that, yeah, things are going to get better. But we
Mhm.
don't know what that means. And maybe it's a cure and maybe it's not, but we're just going to see what happens and just keep believing and keep
Well, and
having
I
that hope.
think a lot of times, probably just, for you too, dealing with a chronic illness, sometimes you're helping someone else. So even if you don't have a cure, well, maybe you not having a cure is what's helping someone else get through their
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah, that's so true. Like there's just so many things like we don't have to know what it means. I think in our minds we're like this is what getting better means. I don't feel this symptom anymore. And it's like, well, what if it wasn't? Like what if the better thing for you? What if in the long run you look back and you're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I still felt that symptom because it led me to this person or because
Mhm.
it helped me through this other thing in my life," right? That it doesn't have to be what our brains think is the solution. Like it could be
Mhm.
different. And when we open our mind to that, I feel like we end up finding, first of all, more peace, and it's easier to feel more hopeful. And I think we end up finding answers easier too in that way.
Mhm.
So what do you do on the days where you want to give up searching, when you're just like, I can't do this anymore, or these doctors aren't believing me, or these people aren't believing me? How do you keep going when things are getting hard?
I typically just journal my feelings,
Mm,
and I allow myself to be upset. I think if I try to say, okay, like, I don't have to be upset, I shouldn't be upset, it makes it worse.
yeah.
And so I think just allowing myself to be angry or to be upset or to cry if I need to cry, I think just allowing myself to have the emotions that I do feel and not put expectations on, okay, you should be happy because of
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, allowing myself to be upset.
Yeah, I love that because I think so often we think like I should do this and I shouldn't do that. And that just causes problems. Like, no, you
Yeah.
shouldn't. You should be exactly as you are right now. Right. And I find that whenever I try to push away emotion or push away thoughts I'm having, that they're not actually going anywhere.
Mhm.
It's not gone. I like to think about it like I'm in the water with a beach ball and I'm trying to push it down, right? And I can hold it down and maybe people can't see it for a minute, but it's the more I push it down, then as soon as I slip up a tiny bit, it explodes, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I'm not going to feel that way. I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to be angry at my illness. No, 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 I can't feel that way. I need to be, I need to feel this way in front of my kids or in front of these
Mhm.
people. And then I end up exploding one day and I'm just like curled up in a ball crying. And I'm like, it all just comes out. Like it's going to come out either way. And if we let it come out when it wants to and we allow it, I find that it doesn't last as long, but also it just feels so much better than trying to lie to ourselves and be like, no, I shouldn't feel this way. I should think positively and
Mhm.
whatever. Right. I love that. Like allowing it, like, yes, we can have hope, but we're still humans who are going to have bad days. Right.
Mhm.
And like even you who like expert at having hope without a diagnosis, like you're still going to have days where it's hard. Right.
Mhm. With my pain that I had for 14 years, I never understood why I'm going through this. Like, when is it going to end? And I had to keep having hope, and having hope for 14 years, it gets exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I think finally opening up to people and explaining to people, I'm in this, excruciating pain. We don't know what's causing it. And that really helped. But then whenever my trigeminal neuralgia started, which is pain in the three sections of your face, when that started, they gave me medication for that. But
Mm.
that medication actually helped my leg pain.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like, if, this trigeminal neuralgia, if that never started, I was hating myself for having that. But if that would never have started, we never would have found a medication that would have helped my leg pain.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of reflecting on that, I don't understand what I'm going through today, but what I'm going through today might lead to a diagnosis. And so just having that little bit of hope that I don't understand what I'm going through, but there is a reason and there is a path. And
Mm.
just kind of, I guess just kind of allowing myself to grieve the life that, I've lost, but then also have that, tiny bit of a hope that tomorrow the puzzle pieces like might fit together and it might make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good because we don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow,
Mhm.
right? That's why I just like to believe it's like life's going to get better. My chronic illness is going to get better. I don't know what that means. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to be in more pain or less pain.
Mhm.
Like we don't know, and I think that can be hard to like feel fearful of the future. I get that question of law of like people feeling so much fear towards the future because they don't know what's going to happen. But I love this other perspective that like also the future could be amazing and we could find
Mhm.
something. We don't know why we're going through this. We don't have to like it. We don't have to want it here, but believing that it's here for a reason and we don't know what that is, but that's okay. Maybe
Mhm.
we'll find out one day and maybe we won't until this life's over. I don't know,
Yeah.
but if I just know it's going to get better, then I'm going to be able to make it through today.
Mhm.
Is it possible, do you think, to find joy in life even if you live chronically ill?
Yes. And I think that, like on the last podcast, just finding a hobby.
Yeah.
And if you find one thing that you find joy in on your bad days, when you're having bad pain days, you can go to that and that just gives you a little bit of joy in the day. So if your hobby is crocheting or writing or um, playing an instrument, if you go to those things that give you joy on those bad pain days, it can help it a little bit. It helps you just, get through the day a little bit easier having something that you do find joy in.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely like we talked about in that last podcast is trial and error, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes you try stuff, it doesn't work and it makes you feel worse or whatever. But I do find that like it does come down to your brain. Like whatever physical symptom I'm feeling, if I'm in a good place mentally, it's like it doesn't really matter what physical symptom I'm feeling because I'm good.
Mhm.
Like I'm doing good. Like when I have a good day, it's because I'm feeling mentally good, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we like hook those together that like, oh, I only feel mentally good when I'm physically good, but we don't have to. Like we can
Mhm.
have a physically sick day and and be so happy. We can feel depression. Like I've been going through some
Mhm.
depression with this pregnancy. Like I can feel depression and yet still find joy in my life. I can still be happy with my life. I can still like allow the depression and deal with that and still find things that bring me joy.
And I think sometimes you just have to kind of tell yourself, okay, today, I'm having a really bad pain day, but I'm going to be joyful and kind of make yourself go find something that brings you joy
Yeah.
because you don't have to, just because it's a bad pain day, it doesn't have to be a bad day. You can go and find something,
Yeah.
even if it's just like watching a TV show that brings you
Mhm.
joy. It can be something very simple, but just finding that one thing can really change your day and it changes your perspective on a good day.
Yeah, that's so true. That's awesome. Yeah, I love all like everything you've said. It just like it makes me feel hopeful, right? Like just like hearing the things you have gone through um and the way that you view your life. It's like it's incredible to see like all these hard things you've gone through and yet you still feel so much hope. So, do you have any last advice for anyone who whether diagnosed or undiagnosed who is struggling with maybe fear of the future, having a hard time, feeling hopeful with their illness, with doctors, with getting a diagnosis, any of that, just any advice you have for people who fear the future more than feel hope?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just not to give up and to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Even if you go to one doctor and they're saying, oh, we've run all the tests, we don't know, what's wrong. Don't let that invalidate your symptoms. And if that means, going to another doctor and, presenting all your symptoms to them, every doctor is different. Every doctor has a different perspective on, um, a diagnosis, medical journey and everything. And so I think just not giving up. And like for me, it took me 14 years, still undiagnosed on some things, but I finally did get some help on the pain. And I think that kind of hopefully can give hope to someone else, that even if they're going through pain for, a decade or longer, there is hope out there. There is, that one doctor that maybe you haven't met yet that can, maybe they read a study on something that another doctor hasn't.
Yeah.
I think just not giving up and allowing yourself to grieve everything that you've lost, but also making yourself have that tiny bit of hope to keep going, because tomorrow there could be a new study out there that, wasn't done before. And so I think
Yeah.
just having that tiny bit of hope can help you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And one thing I thought of while you're talking about that is this idea of giving up. And I was thinking, like, is it even possible to give up? Right? Like what would that, like, we often say that, like, oh, I just give up. But like, is that even possible? Like, even if you just say, okay, I'm not going to go to any more doctors anymore, which I did this for a few years. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I give up, not going to any doctors anymore. And yet, like, I wasn't really like giving up, because I still live with this illness. I was still like constantly, thinking about it. I was still constantly trying to find answers, even though I gave up on doctors. Right. And so I think we give up on like certain areas. Like we might give up on doctors for a while because that gets overwhelming. We might give up on, well, I'm not going to try any more medications. I'm not going to try any more diets. Right. We give up on those things. But like in general, in our whole chronic illness, I feel like it's not even possible to give up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did that for years. I, was like, okay, I'm not going to doctors. But
Yeah.
then my illness would get worse, especially with my POTS. It would get a lot worse. And I was like, okay, if I want to have, a good quality life, I'm going to have to take my medicine. I'm going to have to do the different steps I need to do to manage my illness, even if that means not, finding what works for me outside of the doctors. But I think giving up limits your quality of life.
Yeah.
And so I think for yourself, you deserve to have a good life. And I think you deserve to have the same life that, other people have that aren't chronically ill. But I think you have to kind of adjust it and make it do what's best for you.
Yeah.
But I think you shouldn't give up, because you deserve to have a good life.
Yeah, because it's true. Even if I say, okay, I'm giving up on doctors, I'm not going anywhere anymore. Well, what I'm doing then is working on my mental health, because I'm like, oh, this was overwhelming for me. So I'm going to give that up and I'm going to focus on something else. Because the truth is, like, if you give up on some area, your brain's just going to move to something else. You're just going to be like, okay, now I'm not focused on doctors. Now I'm just focused on like, what can I do day to day for myself? Or can I find things online for myself? Or even just, I'm not going to take any treatments for my chronic illness. I'm just going to deal with it mentally. I'm just going to just try to cope with it. Right. But like in general, like we're always doing something, right? Even if it's, we're taking a break from X, Y, or Z, then we're just going to focus on something else. And I think realizing that sometimes is like, okay, well, maybe like giving up isn't even a possible answer, right? Like, sure, I'll take a step away from this thing, but I'm going to try something else. And I think hope goes along with that, because you don't have to be going to doctors every day to be hopeful. You don't have to be trying new treatments to be hopeful. You could literally just sit in bed all day and still have hope, right? Like typically when we feel hopeful, we take the actions to, get the solutions, but it is totally possible to feel hope without actually even doing anything. And I think your story is very inspiring. And the fact that not only like, do you say like, oh, this is how you should be hopeful, you can just tell by the way that you talk about your illness that you do feel that hope in yourself. And it's amazing. Hey friend, do you find value in this podcast but want to take it to the next level? Work with me one-on-one or check out Chronically Me, the course and workbook. This course takes the things you are learning on the podcast and helps you apply them directly to your life. This course dives deeper into changing your thinking, teaching you how the brain works and how to maximize your life with chronic illness. I designed this course as a companion to the podcast. The podcast gives specific, real-world examples, and the course helps you put them into action. If you want personalized one-on-one help from me, I got you. I also offer individual coaching programs where we can talk about the problems you are facing. I'll help you manage your brain and find solutions to nearly every problem that you have. We will walk hand in hand on this journey together. Check the show notes or the video description on YouTube for more information on getting extra help from me. Talk to you soon.